Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this quick tutorial by edgystir.com. So in today's tutorial we're going to add a little bit more contrast to this image where it's quite bright. We're going to do something called a dramatic light effect, where we add a bit more luminosity to the highlights and we decrease it from the shadows. So let's get started. By the way, you can do this with pretty much any image. It's a pretty cool effect. Adds a bit more, especially if you've got a really busy background like in this picture, and you want to produce like a contrast, a big contrast without losing too much detail on the foreground and the foreground subjects. So let's do this. So the first thing we want to do is create a brightness and contrast adjustment layer. Drop the brightness down to about 90, that'll do, and the contrast all the way up to 100. Now what we're going to do with this adjustment layer is duplicate it 2 more times, so that's Command J or Control J, and we'll have something like this. So hiding the other two and for selecting the first one, we're going to go and make this luminosity so that we have, if you check this out, so if we go from luminosity to normal, if we go back to normal, back to luminosity, you see that the detail and definitely the color, how white the color is, comes back if you use luminosity. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop the opacity for this down to about 50%. And the next part is adding a bit more to the shadows, so we're going to change this to multiply, and we're going to drop this opacity down to about 50%, giving a bit more depth to the shadows. And the last brightness and contrast adjustment layer, what we're going to do is change it so that we have overlay, and we're going to change the opacity down to about 20% or so. This essentially just gives us a little bit more depth and a bit more kick in the highlights, just a tiny bit more. The last step is adding a curves adjustment layer. We're going to make 3 points along here, one nearer, closer to the blacks and the shadows, and a couple by the highlights. So the first point, we're going to change the input to about 45 and the output to about 25. Then we're going to add another one. We're going to change this input to about 210 and this output to about 230. And your last point, we're going to change that to 230 and output to 250. We're almost done. Already you can see that this is a really high contrast image now, but it's a little bit too much for my liking. So we're going to move this up to the screen so that it's not so dark. And I'm going to drop the opacity down to about 70%. Now, as you can see, we got much more focus on the foreground of this dude and this egg. The highlights are a lot clearer than they were before, because beforehand you didn't really have much to work on to find out what the highlights were, other than the obvious direction and flooding of light from this direction. But now you've darkened out the background, creating contrast between the foreground and the background, and these shadows have come out really well as well. That shadow on the egg, based on the little teacup or whatever it is that it's sitting in, has come out too. And overall you get a much more image with a lot more depth in terms of its highlights and its shadows. Anyway guys, I hope you've learned something new or learned a few new things. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Remember to visit edgystir.com for other tutorials on Photoshop and Illustrator and other cool tutorials in web development and other stuff. But yeah, see you guys next time.